Why did Darth Sidious admit that it was his fault that Vader turned against him? Greetings, Acolytes, and welcome back to the Archives. The death of Palpatine marked a huge milestone in galactic history. The final Sith in the unbroken Bainite rule of two lineage was finally dead. The Emperor of the new galactic regime was finished, and for a time, balance was restored to the Force. But later, when Palpatine was resurrected, he had a lot of thoughts to share about his former life and his final moments. Within one of his journals, he would actually address that his greatest accomplishment, that being Darth Vader, had been the one to destroy him. It was the ultimate humiliation. However, Sidious's reaction was actually quite interesting. That is to say, it was unexpectedly mild. Rather than spewing venom and venting his hellish fury, his thoughts bordered on amusement about the entire situation, and Palpatine would even say that it wasn't Vader's fault that he betrayed his master, but it was Palpatine's own fault. So why did Palpatine say this? Why did he show so much non-concern about the greatest failure of his life? Well, today, join us as we open a holocron and explore the twisted mind of Darth Sidious, especially in his new resurrected state. But before we jump in, we must inform you of a terrible vision we've been experiencing. Some of you who are watching have not yet subscribed to our order, so if you like hearing character thoughts and story moments just like this one, be sure to force crush that subscribe button and become an acolyte today for daily holocron readings. Now, let us begin. In the triumphant finish of Return of the Jedi, Vader finally chose the light and saved his son. Hoisting Sidious up in the air, he used the last of his strength to sacrifice himself to the Emperor's lightning, throwing him down the reactor shaft. In that moment, Palpatine was shocked in more than one way. As his lightning sprayed everywhere, he even electrocuted himself. All the Dark Lord could think about, though, was releasing all of his power to cause this traitor as much pain as possible. However, with his arms pinned to his chest and his spine cracking under the cybernetic fingers of Vader, he could not wrench himself free, no matter how much lightning he unleashed. While he succeeded in killing Anakin, the deed could not be done before he was hurled to his doom. But as Sidious plummeted down the reactor shaft, he released his spirit on death. He had known the secrets of essence transfer for some time, as according to Legends continuity, Sidious had done it before. In his words, the awesome powers of the dark side ravaged the flesh and advanced the aging process. So the Palpatine we see on the second Death Star is actually one of his cloned bodies in Legends. His spirit left the second Death Star and traveled across the stars for a long amount of time until he eventually reached his stronghold on the world of Biss, located within the deep core. Within this planet of Biss, there housed a sinister paradise, one where Palpatine used the life force of his subjects to fuel his rituals and experiments. One of these experiments was the dozens of younger clone bodies that he had been using to sustain his life. Palpatine's spirit possessed one of his clones, and in that moment, the Emperor was reborn, resurrected. But the time was not yet right for him to get his revenge. He would let the New Republic think they had won for a period of time, while he constructed a new plan, a better empire. But during this period, he would also finish writing his 3 books, 3 writings that made up the Dark Side Compendium: the Book of Anger, the Weakness of Inferiors, and the Creation of Monsters were the titles of the 3. It was in this final book, though, The Creation of Monsters, that Palpatine shared his rather odd perspective on his apprentice's betrayal. Let us read directly from it. Of all of the monsters that I have created, I still regard Darth Vader as something of a minor masterpiece. No, he was not an entirely alchemical creation, but he was my monster nevertheless. Even though he failed to live up to his full potential, there was much pleasure in transforming Anakin Skywalker from a bright-eyed, tousle-headed youth into the greatest Jedi killer of all time. Yes, he ultimately turned against his master, as monsters sometimes do. But that was my fault, not his. Given the opportunity to create Vader again, I would do so, and with zeal. In this astonishing quote, Palpatine expresses his immense pleasure in creating Darth Vader. After 30 years, Palpatine has let go of the fact that Anakin was cut down from his potential, and has since enjoyed the horrific creation that he did become, referring to him as a minor masterpiece. Finally, Palpatine addresses the reason that we're all here: the betrayal of Vader. Palpatine's take was nonchalant, saying that it wasn't even Vader's fault that he had turned. With Palpatine admitting that it was his own, we have to decipher exactly what he means. What was Palpatine's error? Palpatine is guilty of many crimes concerning the life of Vader, including but not limited to constant mental, physical, and emotional abuse, but I highly doubt that Palpatine regretted any of that. Anytime Palpatine admits that something is his fault, it's his way of saying that he just didn't cover all of his bases and was too arrogant. He was wrapped up in his victory that his foresight didn't perceive several key factors: the presence of Luke Skywalker on Endor, and the conflict within Vader. We remember back to Return of the Jedi when Vader enters Sidious's throne room uninvited in order to inform him that the rebels had landed on the forest moon. The Emperor sharply says that he already knows, because of course he does. This was Palpatine's plan all along. He had allowed this to happen. But then, Vader told him that Luke was with them, that Vader sensed Luke. This catches Palpatine off guard. Palpatine did not sense Skywalker. He even goes as far as to ask Vader whether his thoughts are entirely clear. Here, when Vader emerges to bring Luke in, Palpatine should have sensed the conflict happening within his apprentice, should have sensed that it was actively weakening him. Surely the Emperor sensed the weakness, but he couldn't determine the cause. He had never thought in years that Vader would ever return to the light. The idea that a Sith could ever be brought back from the dark was a foreign concept to Palpatine, one that never even so much as crossed his mind. Palpatine was certain that Vader was so steeped in the dark side that he was lost forever. Interestingly, he had experienced treachery at some point, perhaps which was why he was so keen on replacing Vader with Luke. But he never thought that Vader would do it for a self-sacrificial reason. In a fascinating turn of events, Palpatine blinded himself from sensing the light within Vader because he only ever expected darkness from him. Palpatine, same with Obi-Wan and Yoda, believed that Anakin's transformation was a permanent one. This is what Palpatine was admitting fault to. He was so fascinated with Luke and the Alliance that he closed his mind off to what was happening right beside him. It was this narrow focus that allowed Vader to slip his senses and grab him while he was electrocuting Luke. But now that we're in Palpatine's mind, a plan of vengeance required a slight alteration in perspective and a more aware approach. He mentioned at the very end that if he had the chance to create Vader, he would do it again in a heartbeat, and he did. In the Dark Empire crisis of 10 ABY, Palpatine returned to the galaxy with new superweapons known as World Devastators. He cornered the Alliance and lured Luke Skywalker back to the planet of Biss through a hyperspace wormhole. There, the reborn Palpatine showed Luke the hopelessness of his situation, how all of his friends would die unless Luke found a way to destroy him. Palpatine essentially retried the Vader experiment, the same thing that he did on Endor with Luke, playing into Luke's desire to kill him in order to save his friends. But this time, there was no hope. The Alliance was caught completely off guard, and there was no way out. Not to mention, Luke was in a completely different headspace in this point. After many years of training as a Jedi, his mind created questions that he needed answers. Why did his father turn to the dark side? What about the dark side was so seductive? How did it enslave so many? Luke Skywalker needed this curiosity satiated, and because of this, he pledged himself to be Palpatine's apprentice. However, this was all a farce. He wanted to learn the ways of the dark side so that he could discover a weakness within it, making the exact same mistake that Ulic Qel-Droma did 4,000 years earlier. Trying to destroy the dark side from within, Luke would pretend to be Palpatine's apprentice and act like he became the new Vader, the new creation that Palpatine promised himself. From within, Luke managed to sabotage several World Devastators in order to aid the rebellion. Palpatine, though, was completely aware of Luke's treachery and allowed it to happen. He didn't mind if a few World Devastators were destroyed. He knew that the more Luke fooled himself into thinking he was conquering the dark side, the more the dark side was conquering him. Sidious was monitoring his new apprentice far more closely than he ever had monitored Vader or any apprentice before, succeeding in playing mind games with the young Jedi and pulling the strings to bring him ever deeper into the dark side, proving that Vader's grand mistake was not his own, but was rather his master's, Palpatine's. But if you guys would like a full breakdown of what happened when Luke joined Sidious in the Dark Empire series, be sure to leave a comment and let us know, and we will open a holocron and explore it later. But anyway, my fellow acolytes, that is why Palpatine admitted that it was his fault that Vader betrayed him. Tell us, did you expect this from Sidious? Did you expect him to have this sort of reaction, and even acceptance to his mistake? And do you think our assessment of his meaning was accurate? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, my friends, may the Force be with you.